Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. Today it is Thursday at about it's 8:49, and it's actually a pretty nice day today. The sun is out. It's clear blue skies. First day in a while that we've had kind of nice conditions. It's crazy season, crazy weather. The other day, last week, I just started to see. Started seeing ads for back to school. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, "What?" This summer doesn't even feel like it's been summer. It does in some ways, but then in a lot of ways it doesn't because of the weather. It's been a little bit. Obviously it's been a warmer climate, and I've worn shorts a few times. I've seen people in shorts a few times, but there's weather's been really weird, and it's been it feels like we get these little appetizers, a little little tastes of what summer is. And it's kind of throws me off too. It's really fun. It's really weird. Not looking forward to we go start getting into the cooler weather after August already. Not really looking forward to that, but it is what it is. But this past winter was actually very, very busy for some odd reason, and it was actually really good. It was a long winter, like it usually is, but it was surprisingly busier than usual. So I don't know. It's always winter can be good for projects like recording and getting in more time for rehearsal and writing and all those kinds of things. But seasonal wise or season wise, I love this summer. I wish it was longer, but it goes by super quick. I started working at the uh, Montessori school last year in the pretty much the almost, well, I would say, yeah, it was in September. I actually started. I have this kind of interesting, weird record of starting new jobs on my birthday, and that one was on my birthday. So it was September 21st. I started working at the Montessori school. It's been really awesome. I will be, and this is my first summer season working there. It's pretty laid back. It's a pretty like you know different pace. The school year does get busy. I work less, which is odd too. I work less during the school year, but I work more hours during the summer, which kind of doesn't make sense, but it tends to be that just is a thing. And when I used to work at the teen center in Camden, it was the same thing. I worked quite a few more hours during the summer as opposed to the school year. But it's part time, and so it's nice being able to just to have another side job as part time and whatnot. It's gets a little bit tough, but this time of year and this past winter, financially things have been pretty good for the most part. So all things considered, so I'm able to balance that. Before the pandemic and all the chaos that's ensued, I was really really close to pretty much just doing music for a living. But things really changed, and I lost a teaching position that I had that was really great. So it's a slow, kind of return or whatnot to trying to maybe get myself back in that direction slowly. But it's cool. Really funny thing happened yesterday. Sort of funny. So I like again, like I said, I work at the Montessori school during the summer, and it's an interesting thing. It's a very different pace. It's very laid back, and it's funny because the weather's been so strange. Most days it's been raining or really overcasty or something, but it's pretty much been raining continuously. And on the days that it's actually nice, even in the springtime, it's been pretty hot, pretty warm. So the kids, like obviously on the days when it's raining, we're with the kids, we're not able to be outside with them. But it's funny because the days that we do have that are sunny are, pretty nice and pretty warm. But the kids hate the hot weather. They all of them start complaining. So what ends up happening is we end up watching. We take the kids inside and we end up watching movies. And so we have watched quite a few movies lately, which is really weird. But it's fine with me, but it's just kind of strange doing it for a summer camp. But the so what ends up happening is the kids will complain once the weather's nice, and but it tends to be when the days are clear, it is pretty hot. So the kids complain, and then we end up going inside and watching movies. But we've been watching all of these Pixar movies, like a lot of the newer ones. And and the age group is about from 4 to about 9 years old or so. So they're they're young kids, little babies, pretty much. So I've seen a bunch of the Pixar movies, and there's a handful of the Pixar movies that I really like. I love the older ones, like Wally is one of my favorites. I really love the first Incredibles. Up is a really incredible movie. There's some that are really really great, but there's a whole bunch of them that I haven't seen in a long time. And there's been a bazillion other movies that have come out since then. They're very popular, but that's what all the kids watch is the Pixar movies. And I was like, uh, I had made a post on Facebook, which I don't usually do, but I made a post saying, "Wow, it's a very different time because when I was a kid, and the Pixar movies are good. I think that they're good quality movies for the most part. Some of the animation is pretty spectacular. They're really good for the kids, like with their whole psychology and kind of where they are as kids. And I think there's a lot of good things in the Pixar movies that are good for adults. So they're cool family movies for the most part. It's a good balance. But for the most part, they're very what's the word? Very politically correct. They're like, quote unquote proper movies. So I had made a post in regards to saying, wow, things are very different. Like when I was a kid, I grew up when I was their age. I didn't go to summer camps. There was no real such thing as summer camp. There obviously there was, but there wasn't like this big formalized kind of thing where parents will pay quite a bit of money to send their kids off for a camp for 3 or 4 weeks. And then the kids are, a lot of the camps, I've worked at a few other places, like the teen center, for instance, and it was owned by the Y, and the uh, the camps were pretty intense, like for what they were. They would do all of these activities. They do like a soccer thing. They would do a lot of sports related things. They would do like definite activities. They would take the kids places. They would get them involved. They kept the kids very very active all the time. There were all these like things, and the kids were pretty busy, in those camps. They always like had big activities planned, and they always had a thing every day that they would do. So when I was a kid, when I was their age, I basically would get out of school and just sit on my ass and watch cartoons and eat cereal and hang out with my couple of my friends, and we just hang out, hang loose, and just enjoy the long summer and the hot summer. That would be it. We didn't like go to any formalized camp or any of those kinds of things. Like summer was summer. We just didn't do anything, and it was fun. We would go. Sometimes we'd go on vacation. I'd go on vacation with my family, but we'd usually do that at go camping somewhere or go out of state. But that was usually the extent. Most of it, I was just hanging loose, hanging out at home. But most kids now go to these camps, and the parents pay a lot of money for them. So it's a different thing, and the kids are some of the schedules that the kids have for these camps. They're very busy. So I was expecting when I started working at the teen center, or started working at the Montessori school, it was going to be pretty regimented, but it's really not. It's actually they don't really do much stuff with the kids. They kind of just hang out with them. The younger kids, they get them involved with certain projects, little art projects, but they pretty much, at least what I do for my job, is the same thing that I do during fall. I literally just hang out with the kids. I don't do any. We don't take the kids anywhere. We don't like get them involved with like all of these activities. I just basically hang out with the kids until the parents come. It's kind of weird. And the parents pay quite a bit of money to go to this camp, a lot of money. So it's kind of weird. I'm kind of like, okay, well, for me, it's super laid back. It's almost kind of boring. But I'm always like, man, the parents are paying for this, like paying extra money for this. It's kind of weird. But I had made a post on Facebook saying basically when I was a kid, I watched, like, I was raised on, watching all of the Godzilla movies, Voltron, all the Universal monster movies. I watched, a lot of horror movies, but that was the stuff I was raised on. And these kids are like raised on the Pixar thing, and it's a very different kind of thing. And I was just commenting on how this generation is very, very different, and I don't know, it's weird. Um, and that's what I meant to say. I was just focusing on that, and I posted this thing on Facebook about it, and then there were a couple people who dialed in saying that they were kind of outraged that this is what the kids are doing during camps, and during these when the parents are paying, quite a bit of money to send their kids to these things. So, it's kind of funny, but anyway, so today is going to be a show on a movie that I really, really love. And before I get to that, just a quick plug. On Friday, tomorrow, we will be doing our first quantum show at Sophia, which is a really awesome bar in Belfast. And we're going to be doing our first show there tomorrow night, Friday night at 7:30. Come on by. It's going to be, hopefully it'll be a good time. It's our first time there. So it's a super, super awesome bar that opened probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. I just discovered this place. I just discovered Ophelia about 7 or 8 months ago. Over the winter, they were doing these events, having bands play in there. It's a tiny little place, but it's a super cool place. And so it kind of led to the idea of maybe doing some shows there. So tomorrow will be our first show there. So stay tuned for that. If you're around Belfast, it's a free show. Very cool, very, very cool spot. And then on Saturday, we will be doing a quantum show on WRFR on my friend Spencer Roulard's show. And the show will start at 3. So if you're around, please come on by and check that out. That will be a pretty exciting time. So we're gonna shoot to record the show this time. We had played there a couple of months ago, and we weren't able to record it. So this time we're gonna try to record it. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That will be a lot of fun. And so today's show is on a movie by one of my favorite directors of all time, and that director is Roman Polanski, and the movie is Repulsion. I'm a huge Roman Polanski fan. He is definitely one of my favorite directors. I did my first review of one of his films a few days ago, Death and the Maiden, starring Ben Kingsley and Sigourney Weaver. Just such an incredible movie. A movie that I never see talked about at all. Roman Polanski's most popular movie, I would say, movie that's the most talked about and probably his most successful movie is Rosemary's Baby. Amazing, amazing movie. And I definitely consider that a horror movie. I think it's one of the greatest horror movies. I think it's generally creepy. It's generally scary, and it's got an obvious kind of satanic theme to it, and it's definitely one of the best movies in that genre. But Roman Polanski has explored lots of different genres of filmmaking, including horror. So that movie is such a an iconic classic. It's also the movie that really catapulted his career to where he became like a superstar. It was a massive hit when it came out. It was kind of a phenomenon. But Repulsion is one of my favorites. This movie is just a complete and utter masterpiece. It came out in 1965, and this movie is such a timeless classic. I don't own this on Blu-ray. I have this is a really good edition though. This is the Criterion collection. It's a DVD edition. I have a pretty decent amount of Criterion movies. I don't have a lot. I would like to have more, but the reason I don't have more Criterion editions for films is that they are tremendously expensive. But they are pretty amazing. They come usually with such a an abundance of like special features and documentaries. This one is pretty extraordinary. I'm pretty happy with this. Maybe at some point I would buy this on Blu-ray, but just an incredible movie. I have, I don't think it's a Criterion collection, but another Polanski movie, Knife in the Water, is another movie that I really, really love. That is such a great suspense movie. It's a pure thriller. Amazing movie. This movie is definitely a thriller, but it's definitely a horror movie. It's such an intense movie. This movie really, first time I saw this movie, it really got under my skin and it kind of freaked me out. Of course, this movie is one of the greatest roles by the famous, iconic French actress Catherine Deneuve. She, an iconic legacy of films that she's been in. This is probably my favorite film that she was ever in. She's the lead actress in this movie. And I kind of regard this movie as a suspense movie, but I pretty much regard this movie more so as just like an amazing horror movie. It's really it's essentially about this woman played by Catherine Deneuve, who is a serial killer, but it's kind of told from her perspective, and it's so unsettling, and you get this sense like you are you are her throughout the movie, and you're slowly like in this downward spiral, and you're losing your mind, and you really get this sense of this woman who desperately needs some kind of help but isn't getting any kind of treatment, but she's losing her mind, and you eventually see her where she completely loses her mind all around, and she eventually becomes a serial killer, and there's all of these scenes of where she like dates these guys and lures these guys into her apartment, and she kills them, and then she like buries them in her house. It's a super dark movie, but the thing that's the most unsettling aspect of this movie is just how you're, as a viewer watching this film, you're put in this like in the cockpit of what it would probably feel like if you were a person who was literally losing their mind, and you had these already psychotic tendencies. And it really is such a gripping portrayal of someone losing their mind, and then they eventually do some very bad things. Visually, this movie is so striking and so powerful. Throughout the movie, there are these sequences when Catherine Deneuve's character is noticing something is wrong with herself, where visually it's so jarring, and it's also very almost, it has a very hallucinogenic kind of quality to it, because it's kind of the film is all shot and told from this woman's perspective. So it's such an unusual movie. There's not a lot of films that I can think of that are necessarily entirely, you know, told from the the main character's perspective, especially around the theme or idea of a woman who becomes this murderous maniac. Just an amazing movie. The cinematography for this film is just breathtaking. It's all shot in black and white. The other movie by Polanski that I just mentioned, Knife in the Water, that's another one of his films that's all shot in black and white. Gorgeous. I'm a huge fan of black and white. In some ways, I almost prefer black and white to color. But I feel like Repulsion is one of the greatest examples of how powerful and how rich a movie can be when it's shown in black and white. It just adds so much to the whole flavor of the film, the sense of dread, the fear aspect, and it's a very creepy movie. Just an amazing movie. One of the best portrayals of, I think, essentially a serial killer. And to think that this movie, and it, because it's got this very hallucinogenic kind of vibe, and it's like, you don't know if these things, at one point you don't know if this woman played by Catherine Deneuve is really experiencing these things, or she's like, so it has a little bit of a supernatural kind of element, or she actually is just hallucinating. Just and so the visual aspect of this film is so powerful and so rich, and the music is so incredible. There's all this amazing like jazz in this music in this film, and it's just such an amazing movie. Like the way there's a lot of these long shots too, where they're she's walking down these like city streets, and or she'll like be on her way to meet with a guy, or she'll have a date with some guy, and there's like these long kind of panning shots, and it's just gorgeous. It's amazing. And again, this is a Criterion collection. Criterion is definitely one of the greatest labels or companies that have put movies out of any time. But I don't have a lot. I have a handful. I probably have about five to seven Criterion. I think they're mostly DVDs. I think I have one or maybe two or three Blu-ray Criterion collections. But again, I don't have a lot just because they're very, very expensive. There's a Borders or Barnes and Nobles in Augusta, which I'm amazed still exists. But it's actually a pretty good bookstore. It's huge. It's a massive bookshop. They actually have a massive magazine rack, which is cool. But in the back, they have a movie selection, a movie section, and it's actually really good. The thing that's great about them is they have the entire catalog of all the Criterion movies, and then they have a lot of other films that are pretty good, but they have a massive selection of the Criterion selection, catalog, and it's pretty impressive. But again, they're so expensive. A lot of the movies are like, a cheap one is like $30. I can't remember. This was DVD, so it wasn't that much. I can't remember, but Blu-rays, forget about it. Blu-rays are very, very expensive. And Criterion is a very popular label or a very popular company. Um, Ingmar Bergman was one of the first directors That's how I became, the Seventh Seal, one of the greatest directors ever. I saw a few of his films in the Criterion collection, and that was how I became aware of it. The other Criterion collection that I do have that I really love is Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man, starring Johnny Depp, which is my favorite Johnny Depp movie and my favorite Jim Jarmusch movie. Amazing, amazing movie, and the package is just incredible. So, but if you've never seen Repulsion, this and you like good horror films and movies that are dealing with the very dark subject of serial killers, this is one of the greatest movies, one of the greatest Polanski movies. So many great movies in his catalog. I also really love Chinatown. That's one of my favorites. The Fearless Vampire Killers, such a great movie. Even later films like The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp also. Um, yeah, so many great films that he did and has done. Newer, well, not newer now, but in comparison to the '60s, The Pianist with Adrian Brody, tremendous movie. Like I did a show on Death and the Maiden. I did a show on that movie in particular because I felt like that movie is the least talked about. Repulsion is definitely talked about and regarded as a classic, and I do hear, it does get the proper accolades, but still, at the end of the day, it's mostly the movie that gets the most attention, and rightfully so, is Rosemary's Baby, and I will eventually do a show on that. But because Polanski is, my favorite directors really are. I would have to say would be well, Stanley Kubrick is my favorite director of all time. David Lynch is one of my favorites. I would say Herschel Gordon Lewis is one of my favorites. Um, Roman Polanski is one of my favorites. Akira Kurosawa is one of my favorites. So many great directors. Those are just people I can think of off the top of my head. So eventually, I own a lot of his films, mostly on DVD, and I'll eventually do some more coverage of his films. But figured these are Death in the Main and then Repulsion would be a good like start into covering his films. So thanks again, and this is Jason Dean, and thanks again for supporting this channel, and we will see you next time. Peace.